Final Word Cricket Podcast, and thrilled to have down the screen talking to me today, England's finest ever bowler, the most statistically prolific fast bowler in the history of the Test game, Jimmy Anderson. Welcome to the show. We've got about half an hour with you, so we're going to do this a little bit differently. Ordinarily, we'd like to spend, 60 or 90 minutes talking to our guests. We'll do it as well as we can. First and foremost, big couple of months for you. How you feeling?
Yeah, good. It's been a strange few months. I'm still not sure whether it's sort of sunk in yet that I'm retired from international cricket, but yeah, it's been interesting. But I loved the sort of last few weeks. Lords was amazing. The send off there and the reaction of people was incredible. And then moving into a slightly different role has been good as well. I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed sort of staying around the group. I think it was good that I didn't have that sort of clean sort of break from the team and just go into the wilderness. It was nice to sort of stick around and still be with the team, but in a slightly different role.
Yeah, looking forward to sort of getting into all that with you. Ordinarily we'd go back and tell the whole story of your cricketing life, but instead I'm going to use a model that we used a few years ago with Maxi, where I've simply jumped on Google and found the most 10 asked questions about Jimmy Anderson. Now, BBC History Extra podcast also used that format. I think they stole it from us. They must be Final Word listeners. So we'll do all of that. Before we get to this, though, the reason we've got you today, and I want to give you a chance to have a couple of half volleys here, is an ECB program called We Play Our Way. Yourself, Heather Knight, Ben Stokes, a host of others. You could talk us through it. This big push to get more people involved in community cricket, especially kids, after some really impressive numbers that the ECB were able to register in 2023.
Yeah, well, when I got asked to sort of get involved with this and be a part of it, it was a no-brainer for me because of the way I got into cricket. In Burnley, the school I went to didn't really play, and I was fortunate that my dad played for a local club, so I got involved that way. So I feel quite lucky in the path that I've taken, and obviously it's not the easiest sport to get involved in, or hasn't been in the past. Certainly with the cost of equipment, the facilities needed, it's always been quite tricky. So I think to get involved in this, to get people playing, the impact that cricket has had on my life. Obviously, it's been a huge part of my life, but I think not only that, it's actually sort of molded me as a person as well. It's really helped me with all sorts of different skills and sort of learn a lot about myself. I've made a lot of friends. So I think it was, as I said, it was a no-brainer for me to get involved, to try and encourage more children to play, to give them the opportunity to play and experience the game. And the funding that the government funding that was made available was sort of going to hopefully springboard that. We've got some amazing charities in the UK, cricket charities, that have been trying for years to get cricket into state schools, to get cricket into inner cities, and this funding will hopefully just give that the push that it needs to spread this far and wide across the UK.
Yeah, it feels like the whole aim of the game is to lower the barrier for entry, right, for kids, especially those that don't come from areas of privilege associated with, the Taverners, Chance to Shine, MCC Foundation, then All Stars and Dynamos for young kids, and how successful that's been in the last 6 or 7 years. Over 1 million kids in England got a chance last year to play cricket, and it feels like a lot of this is being funneled through a website where you can... I had a crack at it the other day, Jimmy, when the ECB sent it through to me, and the team that Felix and I play for put in a couple of search terms for games near us, and remarkable how many teams I'd never even heard of. And surely that's the way for young people to see that, it's only 800 metres up the road where I can find a team and subscribe and play next year or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just that's the whole point of it, is to make it more accessible, to give people opportunities to play, whether it's kids at school, whether it's finding a local club, finding, as you said, there's so many clubs out there that are looking for players. It's boys and girls as well. It's men and women. There's plenty of women's teams popping up around on the club circuit as well. So there's so many opportunities out there to play at the minute, but it's trying to increase that, trying to increase the visibility of those teams, and also build more opportunities, whether it's, as I said, I think the ECB are trying to get 15 domes, I think, these cricket domes. So there's one in Bradford that's gone up, and that's been a huge success. So trying to get to those areas where there might not be the field that you to play cricket, or we know what the weather's like in the UK. So to have like these roofed domes where you can, they're big enough to play a full size 11-a-side game. You can half them and play a slightly smaller game, but it's just giving people a chance to get out there and play, because as we've said, it potentially people will look at cricket and think it's not that accessible. It's not for them. They think the people that play it maybe a certain type of person. When you see the England team and the amount of privately educated guys we've got in that team, it can feel like it's a bit closed off to certain people. But I think for me, and certainly Ben Stokes, who's involved in Heather, we're very passionate about trying to get cricket out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, so that website, we'll pop it in the show notes. It's pretty straightforward, ecb.co.uk/play. Thanks for talking us through that, Jimmy. Into our Google search terms, only the appropriate ones. I'll leave out the ones that you probably don't want brought up on a podcast interview. Or maybe you do, I don't know. The first one that comes up these days anyway is Jimmy Anderson retirement. Let's start there. So how does that sit, former England fast bowler? Because, this has been your identity for over 20 years and now it's not. Just interested in how that, in the very short term you've been away from being a professional, how that feels right now, at least in an England context.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've really had chance to let that sink in or try and get my head around it. I went straight from playing. 48 hours later, I was bowling mentor or coach or whatever you want to call it. So I've not actually left that environment yet. So it still feels like I'm a big part of that test setup. And I'm sure that'll carry on throughout the summer. I think as time goes on, I'm sure it'll sink in more. And when people ask me what I do for a living, and that question now is a bit trickier than what it has been for the last 20 years. But I feel all right about it at the minute. I feel really privileged that I got to play the game professionally for 20 odd years. So I just feel privileged and proud that I've managed to achieve what I have, and I'm actually quite excited about what's next because I don't know what that is, and I think that excites me. I've still got plenty of options, whether it is the coaching side of it, whether it's the media side of it, or whether it's still playing in some capacity for a couple more years. I still feel like that's not off the table. The way that my body feels, the way that I've been bowling in recent years, I still feel like I potentially could have something to offer on that front as well.
Just a point of clarification, Jeff and I have had a number of scraps on the podcast, and I've seen a lot of it online as well, where people are very angry that you don't play anymore. They feel like there's been this stitch up where you're still in the best 11, you've been fucked over. But the way you explained it, certainly on tail enders when the announcement was made, is that you decided that Lords was the right thing for you. Once it had been indicated to you that it was going to be the last summer, that you said, no, actually, I want to stop where I started. Is that essentially it? That had you wished to play more this summer, there would have been opportunities for you to do so, but you saw Lords as the best jumping off point for you?
No, I don't think that it wasn't really a case of being able to play the whole summer. So it was kind of Lords or never again. So I decided I wanted to have one more go in England, because I felt like I wanted my family and friends to see me play one more time, and it was an amazing test match in Dharmshala, getting 700 wickets. I was thrilled with that, but I felt like I wanted to play one more time in England.
Interesting, yeah. So that there is that subtlety to it, that it wasn't like you could have played a test at Old Trafford, that there was that line drawn. And I mean, I guess you have said already or acknowledged already that you needed that tap on the shoulder. I think the interview you did with Aggers was to that effect, where you're the kind of cricketer who was hardwired in such a way that if you're still getting picked when you were 46, you would have been playing Test cricket when you were 46. I think that's commendable, but that's kind of how you see it as well, that it required someone at some point saying, right, we think this is the right time for it to end.
Well, yeah, I think. I mean, I always just thought that as long as I'm good enough to get in the team, and as long as I'm fit enough, not letting anyone down, then I'd keep going as long as possible. Um, but obviously, everything's got to end at some point, and England felt like it was, this was a good time to have a look at other players. They've got the Ashes in 18 months, so they wanted to go in a different direction. And I guess, it happened to me a couple of years ago with the West Indies tour, and I didn't feel like that was the right time for me, and felt a bit aggrieved with how it was done as well. Just a quick phone call to say you're not going to the West Indies, and we're going in different directions. So I think this time it felt a little bit more like more thought had gone into it. Like actually, probably different for me as well. Now Stuart had retired as well. It probably felt like maybe it was the right time. So I wouldn't say I was happy about it, but I didn't kick off or anything. I didn't feel particularly upset about it, and having the opportunity to stay around the group and in a slightly different role interested me as well. So, yeah.
And look, it was the perfect 3 days, right? You flogged them in the test match. You couldn't have bowled much better in the second dig. I suppose always nice to leave people wanting a little bit more, necking the pint on the balcony like you're a member of the royal family after a wedding, Buckingham Palace kind of energy. Interesting. Just on that, we had Greg James on with, I don't know, I guess 6 months ago or something like that now for a long chat with him. And he speaks lovingly of you, but notes that you're out of the three of you, or the 3.5 if you want to include Matt. Matt not being a celebrity in another field, but you three who have been, that you find that the most difficult to deal with, that Felix and Greg find it easier to deal with fans perhaps than you do. And that's interesting that at the end you seem so open to it and embraced it on that final few days at Lord's. You were happy to lap up the adulation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there were parts of it that I found awkward that week. For example, just before we went on the field, there was a video played, and we were waiting sort of in the entrance to the long room, and I just wanted to get out on the field and play at that point. So there were parts of it where I thought it's turned into a bit of a benefit game, which I didn't feel comfortable with because it was obviously a test match that we wanted to win. But also, if speaking to teammates and friends before that week, they're like, "You've got to milk it, mate. Milk it as much as you can." So I thought, it's never going to happen to me again. So yeah, I mean, the back end, that pint that I drank on the balcony, I just popped my head out to see the amount of fans that there were on the field, because I'd never seen fans on Lords before. It happened in the 80s, I think, but I've never seen them be allowed onto the field. So just to see a sea of people on the outfield at Lords was incredible. And I popped my head out, and it didn't twig that they might be just staring straight up at the balcony. And then from then on, it was peer pressure to go back out and neck a pint. So I thought I'd oblige.
Priceless memories. I know a lot of cricketers. I'm sort of one of them. So I'm never going to retire. I'm going to play till I'm 70. Clary Grimmett was still inventing deliveries when he was in his 60s in his backyard. I see a little bit of that in you, right? You've said on your pod before that you think you'll always have that bowler's mentality. You've already alluded to it to an extent, but there's a lot of interest in you as it relates to Lancs next year, and maybe even some club cricket with Burnley. Like, where's your head at the moment with actually going down the pyramid, like some other greats of the game have done? Mike Gatting was playing club cricket for 25 years after he retired. Merv Hughes played all the way down the pyramid until the very end as a fast bowler deep into the 2000s. Do you feel like that's a way you can make a contribution?
I definitely think I want to I feel like there's something there that I still want to play a little bit more, but I just don't know what that is yet. And I'm pretty open to anything at the minute. And I guess this will become clearer as time goes on, as the rest of the year progresses. There's 2 test tours in the winter. I'm not sure whether I'll be on them as a in this role that I've got at the minute for the rest of the summer. So there's plenty of things to think about, and I don't know. I just need to sit down and chat to people about it. I really don't know. I feel at the minute that, I watch 100 and see the ball swinging around in the first 20 balls and think, I can do that. I can still do that. I'm still like, I don't know whether that is an option, a viable option to maybe see if I could do a job in white ball cricket, franchise cricket, something I've never done. And obviously, we've got there's Lancashire as well, who have been amazing with me, and I've not probably had the time to sort of give back to them. I've played more tests than I have first class games for Lancs. I've whenever I've gone back, I've tried my very best and loved it. But I think there's maybe something there where I do feel like I could give something back to the club.
Suspect that answer is going to make a lot of people very happy hearing that you're still keen to keep bowling in some capacity, even the white ball stuff, quite like that. Next Google term here, Jimmy Anderson test wickets total. We've dealt with this a little bit. I suppose there was a little bit of, will you take 9 wickets and overtake Warney in your final test? But I guess you had to surrender to that not being realistic when you were only playing the one. The stat that jumped out at me, though, in the final week, which was not as impressive, but pretty bloody impressive, 40,000 test deliveries. I mean, the ability to keep doing it, to push so far beyond what any other fast bowler was able to achieve. And the fact that it's entirely plausible that no fast bowler will ever do what you've done again. That must feel so satisfying that all the hard work, all those runs at 6 o'clock in the morning, all those days in the gym, all those operations have made it, got you to this point and got you off at that point as well to, 705 or 6 test wickets, whatever you finished up with.
Yeah, well, I do feel proud. Touch wood, I've never had an operation, so I think that's probably something that's
right.
That's something that's helped me keep going for as long as I have, which is unusual for a fast bowler. But I feel so lucky that I've been able to do it for as long as I have. I've been given this body that can somehow cope with the stresses of Test cricket. Obviously, I have worked hard at fitness, recovery, technique, all these things that help you or help maintain that sort of ability to play at the highest level. But yeah, I enjoyed all those things. I think that's the one thing that, like, when people retire, they say, "Oh, I just fell out of love with the gym," or "I couldn't do another warm up," or whatever it might be. There's other things around the cricket that maybe people don't see that take an effect on someone's decision when it comes to retiring. But I still loved all that stuff. I loved like having 2 months off and then going in the gym every day and seeing the physical change and see how you're getting ready to play a series. It was just really really something that I loved, and I think that's part of the reason I want to keep playing, actually, is so I've got a reason to go to the gym, because I don't want to turn into an old has-been fast bowler who looks like he's wintered well, should we say.
Yeah. Speaking to a cricketer the other day that said, one day I'm going to retire and get fat and play golf, and was like saying that with relish. But yeah, you're obviously cut from a slightly different mold. And, just, I guess, moving away from cricket a bit, the next term is Jimmy Anderson age, right? And you turned 42 a week and a half ago, whatever it is. And these things do catch up with you. I turned 40 next week, and I've been thinking more and more about this, that, you're no longer, by definition, you're not young when you turn 40, right? I mean, you are in middle age. But the difference with you, I suppose, is that you've always been able to stay young by virtue of what your day job is, playing a young person's sport, or should I say a sport which keeps you young. How do you feel ready to be a middle-aged man, like outside of cricket and doing other things that middle-aged blokes do, and your hair going grey and not being able to stay in as good a physical condition, and other things that naturally happen with the aging process?
Yeah, I'm not ready for that at all. No, I'll keep putting that off. I think I definitely think cricket's kept me young. I think sharing a dressing room with younger guys, playing sport, playing catch for a living, and just mucking around, just being stupid. I love being stupid. Love the everything that comes with touring and being part of a dressing room. The pranks and everything else, the laughs that you have, taking the mickey out of each other. That's something that I'll definitely miss if I ever do leave that dressing room environment. But yeah, I think I guess there are times when you think, oh, I'm getting old, but I do think it's a mindset. Like, just because this number's next to your name doesn't mean you have to start acting like that. Doesn't mean you have to start feeling like that or behaving like that. I think it's completely a mindset, and my body at no stage has started to feel like it's 42. I'll still, dive around at tennis court when I play with my kids, or I'll still dive around in the field if I play for Burnley in 5 years' time or whatever. So I think until I literally can't move, then I'm going to keep messing around and try and act as young as possible.
And there must be so much gratitude for your body for that, right? Like, people call you a freak to be able to do what you've done. I know a lot of work underpins it, but still, you've got a body that's not required an operation. I'm staggered to hear that all the way through, not even a tidy up surgery, like almost every cricketer has that experience of being cut open, general anaesthetic, recovery, and so on. That's not been part of your story. The very fact that you were still bowling in the mid-80s in your final test, one of the questions here, what's Jimmy Anderson's fastest ball? Well, that's a number of years ago, but you were still able to bowl at a pace that was genuinely lively all the way through to the end. You could probably do it if I chucked you a cricket ball right now. Like, there must be that, like, so much gratitude that you've got a body that's let you do what you can do.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel so fortunate. Like, I don't know how it's happened. Both my mum and dad are quite short. I guess 5'8" and 5'6", 5'5". So I'm 6'2", and I've got a body that's just, it feels like I was made to bowl quick, to be a bowler. I can't remember the rest of the question now. I'm sorry.
I know, it's just that, how grateful you are to your body.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, so I feel fortunate that I've got the body I have, and I feel like that's part of the reason why I want to keep going. Like, while it's still functioning, then use it. Like, while I still can bowl, there will be a time when I can't turn my arm over at all, and I can't bowl at 50 miles an hour, never mind 80. So while I can do that, I want to keep doing it.
Yeah, the beauty of that is you can still become an off spinner. I played a game with Andy Caddick last week, who you played with at the start of your career.
Yeah,
it's now bowls off. He's quite useful too. Going back to that world, actually, and Jimmy Anderson debut is one of these Google terms that comes up, and it is another world, right? Like, Stewie's in his 60s. I was there at your international debut in 2002 at the MCG, the day that Warnie's shoulder went pop. It was also the day when you turned out. The names on those team sheets are of a completely different generation. Like, almost everyone on there feels like, or sounds like, a relatively old man, except for you. Do you sort of feel that sometimes, that you did? Do you recognise that these were guys you actually played against and competed against at the highest level?
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of. I don't know how I feel about it. It's amazing to think that I've sort of, my career's span across this, a few generations, I guess. Looking at those, I remember that my debut really, really well, and bowling at Gilchrist and Hayden, who I'd watched destroy England for years through the late 90s and early 2000s. Was and then all of a sudden I'm playing against them was just surreal. And then I'm sure in the future guys will say that, the young guys that weren't born when I've made my debut, that I've played with in the last few weeks, they'll be saying that in 20 years' time.
Yeah, there's that nice link in the chain with you and Jamie Smith now, I guess, is the most logical person being a batter, his career likely to go for a long stretch of time, and how capable he is. But, T20 wasn't invented when you made your international debut. Right. I think the way just the world has changed around you. My favourite factoid about your longevity is that your first list day game in a knockout comp for the Lakes board in 2000 was against Suffolk. So I guess the minor counties were invited to play in that at the time. And you bowled to Derek Randall. Derek Randall is 73 years old and made his professional debut in the mid-1960s. I mean, I wonder if you even remember that. Do you remember fronting up and playing against Derek Randall in his mid-40s or something like that? late for it.
I do. And is this because I said I feel young and I'm trying to stay young and you're trying to make me feel really old?
Not exactly, but I think there is an interest in just like how you've been able to span the
Yeah.
generations in this way. And Randall, I mean, when people think of Derek
Yeah.
Randall, they think of the centenary test, right?
I remember it well because I had a video of, and like VHS, like that is old, of, I think it was called like 101 Great Wickets or something like that. And Derek Randall was on there a couple of times doing these runouts and then this celebration for, I think it was for Notts. And then all of a sudden, all these years later, that would have been in the 80s when I watched that video. And then 20 years later, I'm opening the bowling against him, opening the batting. And it was very surreal. I actually did mention that in the dressing room. So in recent times, it got brought up more by the younger guys. Like, who did you play against? So like, I presented Jamie Smith his cap, and I said when I made my debut at Lords, there was another Surrey keeper that day, and it was Alex Stewart, who he obviously knows, but is now in his 60s. So it is weird for these guys. So they were asking about that, and when I mentioned Derek Randall, not many of them had heard of him, which was the scary thing. Like, they're that young that they don't even know a lot of the players that I played against.
Brilliant. Love all of that. This is a slightly unusual one, but I thought it was worth raising in the context of T20 cricket. Jimmy Anderson net worth, right? People want to know how much money you got and that kind of thing. Very online, inquisitive, voyeuristic, and so on. You're widely depicted as the best fast bowler to do it, or at least, the most prolific fast bowler. People make their own subjective judgments on who the best bowler is. They're lovely words and so on, right? But the financial side of things for you being your craft isn't valued as much in T20 land, in franchise land, by the market. So there's probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cricketers who are nowhere near as well known or as well accomplished as you, who have earned shitloads more money than you. I know the generation before you, right? The guys who are in their 50s now feel a little bit aggrieved that all these blokes came along and became multimillionaires times over through the IPL and so on, and they can be a bit sniffy about that. Like, is that ever something that's kind of occurred to you, that had you done something else in the game, not that you could change your discipline, I suppose, but it's a bit frustrating maybe that your particular discipline, bowling, swing at a really high level, is perfect for Test cricket, but isn't perfect for the modern T20 game where people make the most amount of money, and the contradiction in all of that?
No, it's not frustrating. I think, of course, guys now are going to make the most of the money that's going around franchise cricket. You'd be stupid not to. And the thing for me is I'd love to think that even if I was maybe born 10 years later, I'd still love Test cricket and still want to play Test cricket, because I do feel like that is the ultimate test of you as a player, as a person. You go through so many emotions in over 5 days, and what I can never quite get my head around is seeing. I love the Test cricket, but working a batter out in T20 cricket, you maybe don't necessarily have to do that as much. So when I see a guy bowling a wide full toss and getting caught deep point and then celebrating the wicket like he's just got a hat trick, I struggle with that. But that's just a different generation. It doesn't frustrate me. I feel fortunate that I've played in the era that I have with central contracts. We've been looked after brilliantly. Without central contracts, I would not have played as long as I have. There's so many guys in the era just before me who would have played a Test match and then gone straight to a county game. So it was so arduous as a bowler. So you just getting through a season was an achievement, unscathed. So I feel really fortunate that my career has been lengthened by the introduction of central contracts. I've got a few years left, I reckon, to try and eke out a few pounds in the franchise league.
This will be the news point, Jim. You know how these things work, right? The story out of this in the paper is going to be Anderson open to T20 offers. And who knows? I mean, your first T20 is I had a look at this as well, is in the first year of the Blast playing, I don't know what it was called then, the T20 Cup or whatever it was. Ian Harvey took 108 not out off you guys in a Roses game, right? Imagine 20 years later fronting up and playing in I don't know, whether it's in the 100 or playing somewhere around the world. There are plenty of competitions for you, Jim. And I know that you've taken more one-day wickets for England than anybody else. That is interesting that you might reconsider what your skill set is in the context of the modern game, and there might be actually something there for you. That's not crazy.
No, I mean, I don't know like how seriously I'm actually thinking about this myself right now. It's just, I guess once that the retirement thing becomes reality, it's then not, like your head goes to, right, where can I, what can I do next? Where can I go? What sort of thing do I want to do? And as I said, the bowling thing is still a definite option for me, as the way my body feels right now, the way my head is. So yeah, I mean, I think that certainly from a skills point of view, the way Test cricket's gone, certainly bowling at the England lads in the nets, you've got to have like change ups and slow balls and all that sort of stuff. We constantly talk about it and work on it as bowlers, and so I don't think that'd be an issue. But yeah, it's just, I mean, again, is there a sort of, I don't know how much what's the word, like how much people would want a 42-year-old bowler in their team, so we'd have to wait and see.
What's that thing? It'll sell plenty of shirts at the very least, so maybe that could be, you could leverage off that deep in your career. Last thing I've got written down here from Google is Jimmy Anderson family. I guess that's another part of this, right? You've been on the road, you've lived on the road in so many respects. Now you get to be with your girls more. That was obviously very special. The only time you seemingly cried during the whole of the 3 days at Lord's, I'm sure there were your own private moments, but was when they rang the 5-minute bell on morning one in the pavilion. That I suppose is a really positive thing about this move in your life, that you can be with them just the more days of the year than has otherwise been possible.
Yeah, I think it will be just as weird for them though as it will be for me, because they've, certainly the kids have spent their whole life with me as a cricketer. They know nothing else. They've enjoyed coming on Ashes tours for Christmas away in Australia, and coming to all the tests in England during the summer and stuff like that. So it's going to be just as weird for them. But that's why I really enjoyed that moment, because without their support, without my wife's support, none of this would have been possible. I wouldn't have carried on for as long as I have, without them pushing me and encouraging me and supporting me. So that moment when they rang the bell, for me, it was like amazing for them to have their own little moment and something that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. So I think that's why I got quite emotional about it, because of how big a part they've been in my career. They get a little piece of their own sort of memories to take with them.
Well, Jimmy, our 30 minutes is up. That's been fun, getting to do it that way with you. We could have done, I suspect we could have done one of these, 2-hour every moment of your career, but that's a nice way to do it, and also a nice place to leave it. Congratulations on what's been such a sensational, stellar career as a fast bowler. All the other work that you're doing, the program that we mentioned off the top will be in the show notes. So if you are a budding cricketer, or even if you've never played before, like this is what I'm finding, in kind of going back and playing some friendly cricket, it's people who've never played and they fucking love it, and good on them for it. So there is that opportunity to jump on the website and find somewhere to play next year, and we look forward to seeing the next chapter of the Jimmy Anderson story, whatever it will be, whichever Google search terms it will spawn. Thanks for joining the final word, and thanks for everything you've done.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.